at all.
Southside weather for KFI. There's a high surf advisory in effect. It's going to be there until tomorrow night at 9. And then tonight it's going to be mostly cloudy. There's a chance of a scattered shower or two. Low 60s to the 50s. Partly sunny afternoon tomorrow after the burn off.
Oh, look at that. We got
Mid 60s to the coast to lower 70s for the inland areas.
we got mics.
Highs mid 60s to mid 70s. And then on Tuesday, it'll be a few more clouds. Chance of rain won't come in to play until Tuesday night. It will last into Wednesday and Wednesday night. Right now, 57 degrees in Mission VA, all 59 in Seal Beach, 52 and 59 degrees in Baldwin Park. We lead local live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom.
You like Oreos? The cookies, right? Cookie, 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 cookie. I'm president and you're not.
Dark secret place.
Brian Suits on KFI.
Do you start the live stream already?
Hey, I'm gonna. You can sit there. That's the throat clearing. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place, live on a Saturday night. Los Angeles' #1 show. Not just about dance music and all the EDM that we do, but about stuff and junk, the war on terror. And now, for the 4th Saturday in a row, it is now officially the end of ISIS. And that is now, according to the Syrian Defense Forces, the Kurdish and then Sunni Arab resistance that the United States supports, arms and trades. And so the end of physical control of territory by ISIS is over, and now officially the next phase is happening. Not exactly one of those, sailor kissing a nurse in Times Square kind of days so far. Anyway, but we will get to that. President Trump officially via Twitter informing the world that the United States recognizes Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights. So we'll get into some of the backstory there. Speaking of that, by the way, so I do a new thing on YouTube. If you've ever gone to the Dark Secret Place channel on YouTube, which you can get to either on YouTube or much easier, you can just go to unsheepyourself.com and it'll take you right to the live page. So I started a new thing for KFI, and that is the morning map splainer. So anytime there's a geographic story in the news, like last week, the Golan Heights story, I do a quick 3 or 4 minute explainer with graphic aids and maps and Sharpies and little toy airplanes and stuff like that. And I keep it tight and bright between 3 and 4 minutes, so you can just crank it out. So we'll get to that. Also, the death today of Rafi Eitan, one of the most significant guys in the history of Israeli intelligence. He's dead, but more in memoriam. We'll talk about some of his career, and here in just a second, we'll talk about the New Zealand firearms ban, because California politicians are holding this up as a model for California, and I don't understand what they don't understand about a federated republic. The United States is not a democracy. A democracy, everyone votes, raises their hand, it's all counted. This is a federal republic. You're represented in Sacramento, and the state is represented in Washington, D.C. We don't have a national raising of the hands for elections. And we also have this annoying thing called a constitution, which I've read up on quite a few times. And so the differences between New Zealand and America, because it's day 2 of this, and I'm already hearing people with look at that, they did in a week, we haven't been able to do in 240 years. And isn't that weird about a constitution and a constitutional amendment? But first, I thought I would rip off all the darn kids on their YouTube. I don't know why. It's not just kids. I don't know why, but unboxing stuff is a YouTube genre. A couple of years ago, the watch me react to the Patriots intercepting Russell Wilson's pass on the goal line, end of the Super Bowl. Those videos became huge. You put a camera, put your cell phone on selfie mode, shooting the living room and whatever. The opening scene of season 6 of Game of Thrones, the Red Wedding or whatever, and those have become a huge thing. The watch me react to stuff, which I don't get. The other thing I don't get is the unboxing of stuff. Hey, I got a new cell phone. Here, I'm going to unbox it. Or whatever the electronics are, they unbox it. And it's always the same. I don't know, but these videos have like millions. I'm not going to throw them under the bus because I love Leo Laporte. I love Text Talk. And I'll say this for Leo. He doesn't do this. But a lot of people who he links to, and so a lot of his tech, widget gizmo dudes, they will do the unboxing of the new Samsung S10 Galaxy phone. And it starts with a box. And they always say, it's a box. They hold it up and all this. They open the box. And oddly enough, there's a phone in the box. And it came with a charger. And the charger came with a cord. And there's also a mobile cord. And I mean, I don't get why the packaging matters. And there's also a little bit of that ASMR, that sensory sound thing, because there's crinkly plastic in it. So not one to let a good idea go unripped off. I have an unboxing. If you're on unsheepyourself.com, this must be a real treat for you. If you're listening to the radio, my magical powers of description are going to come into play here. So I went to the Reagan Library yesterday. My brother and his wife were in town. So went to the Reagan Library. No, just because I just couldn't. I mean, they're all dead, and it's just a casting of them. And coming, the next exhibit is going to be Leonardo da Vinci. So if I'm going to go check out dead Italians, I'm going to see Leonardo's. No, because I'm smart. I don't go to the Reagan Library. I don't go to Harry Potter Town at Universal. Don't go to any of those places on weekends. I don't go to Costco on weekends. I don't go to big box stores. I go to the Reagan Library Monday through Thursday. But we made an exception yesterday, and it paid off. It was sparsely, some schools there, and a lot of people, but you could find parking. It wasn't crazy. I've been up there when it's nuts, and I love it when you can park and just walk in and go in. It's great. And it was phenomenal weather yesterday. So we ended the library tour and the Air Force One tour by sitting out on that back deck looking at Ventura County, looking at the sun go down over the ocean. It's sublime, bro. Oh, there's not just lunch. There's a bar. There's a pub. There's a bar under Air Force One. Go to the Nixon. Go to the Nixon Library. There's a bar. There's not an Irish bar there, but go to the Reagan Library, and there's a pub. You can have a Guinness at the Reagan Library and sit directly under Air Force One. It's just really cool. And there's a giant window there. So in the Reagan gift shop, I bought, they have a real authentic piece of Berlin Wall there at the Reagan Library when it was first built in whatever it was, 91, 92. That was and I don't know when they acquired the piece of the wall. And it's great. It's moving. It's very moving to me. And I've explained to my daughter what it means and everything, because when I went in the U.S. military, there was a Cold War, and I did it fully anticipating that I would be maybe someday fighting the Soviet Union or fighting in Europe. And I'm a great lover of the Germany, and I was moved when the wall came down. And there's chunks of wall all around the U.S. Army at Fort Sill, Fort Benning, and there's a section of it down across the street from LACMA. In fact, on Wilshire, if you're on the south side of Wilshire, where all the Roach coaches line up for lunch, there's a great section. It's like a 5-section panel of the Berlin Wall, and it's got a great John F. Kennedy and a great Ronald Reagan on it. And it was original artwork. So if you want to see it here in LA, there's a great section down there across the street from LACMA. So anyway, there's one on display at the Reagan Library, and for the first time, I've combed that gift shop. As far as I know, this is the first time they've offered this, a miniature of the Berlin Wall section. And it's not a piece of concrete. It's a 3D exact model of the piece at the Reagan Library. And I went to the gift shop, and again, I paid for it. I've got the receipt. It's $34.95, kind of steep, but I want it for my YouTube set. So now the unboxing. I'm going to unbox this. I'm going to be part of that YouTube sensation and unbox it. It comes in a white box, approximately the size of a rectangle. Well, I mean the size, shape of a rectangle. And it's wrapped in paper, Michael Chappé. So let me, so there goes the box. Now I'm unwrapping the plain, almost like butcher paper. And then the section of Berlin Wall comes in a plastic wrap. And if you're watching it on cheapyourself.com, I'm holding it up. On the one side is the original, the graffiti that is featured on the wall, and it's the kind of the profile, not the exact profile. And on the back, it has, quote, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, close quote. Ronald Reagan, June 12, 1987. The Brandenburg Gate in West Berlin, Deutschland, an authentic section of the Berlin Wall, resides at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. It's got the Ronald Reagan Presidential Seal. So I got it. It was fun. It was a fun trip, fun day. And I got my little section of the Berlin Wall statue, or whatever you call it. Yeah, a little bigger. It's like a thinner cell phone, but it's scaled. So this will be featured on my YouTube set on sheepyourself.com, so you can see it there. But if you're on YouTube right now, I'm showing it. And so there's my unwrapping.
Is it made in the USA?
I think you can go online. Probably, I think most things they sell, you can go online. But who wouldn't want to go? Because $34.95. Let's call it what it is. That's $35. And a lot of people don't know this, but much of the library is accessible without paying anything. You can walk in and go right. There's a simulated White House South Lawn. So you can go right through the front doors and go to the patio where the view is, a beautiful view. And you can see Ronald and Nancy Reagan's grave. You can see that great rose garden they have there and everything. That doesn't cost anything. And a little quick tip for the pros. If you plan on going more than once in a year with a group of people, buy a membership. Because if you walk in with 4 people, it's like $130. If you buy a family membership, it's $95 and it's good for the full year. So I'm just a little pro tip there. And here's more of that soothing ASMR ambiance. There's the wrapping paper. So anyway, there you go. I love it. And I think it's a write-off. Pretty sure. If it goes on my YouTube set, I'm pretty damn sure it's a write-off. All right, that is the unwrapping, the ritual unwrapping of the Reagan Berlin Wall. When we come back, what did New Zealand do? And is Gavin Newsom just huddled over his laptop reading this stuff and touching himself? Probably. We'll talk some California dark secret place when we come back. Right after this, it is Brian Tutin here till 11 o'clock, KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news.
I'm sorry I accidentally did that to your glasses.
What's that?
It doesn't say if it's made in China or not.
What does?
People are asking if this was made in China. Doesn't say. People are also saying that you're going to yell at me.
I bet it's not. They're pretty good at the Reagan Library.
I got a yo-yo from there.
At the Reagan Library, they're pretty good about avoiding that controversy. But if it wasn't made in China, I hope those Chinese learned the lesson. That tyrants never win. Sic semper tyrannis is what I say. But and then Reagan got a Declaration of Independence and a U.S. Constitution.
Yeah, and it was rolled up like a real one.
Like
Hello from Pico Rivera.
ye old parchment.
Why did you just turn that towards me?
Well, because they have to see the mic flag. They can go like that, I guess. Whatever. Here, I'll just go like that. Go ahead. It's your show.
Ha-ha.
No. So yeah, this is cool. If I'd seen it earlier, isn't that weird? Hi everyone, how you doing?
Hi.
But this is pretty cool. Yeah. So the one.
I'm making an edit right
The
now.
one at LACMA, when I say LACMA, you all know I mean Los Angeles County of Modern Art. By the way.
There's certain kind of subversion available when you
So there's a great section
it just went away.
in front of the LACMA, and it's very selfie worthy.
If you visit my YouTube channel, yes, I have a YouTube channel. It is capital R A-I
Why don't you?
N-Y. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna write it down because I want people to get off of your
So
channel
if your
and go
kids,
to mine.
if your kids are on this thing called Gotcha Life,
Gotcha Studio and Gotcha Verse.
if you have kids between 6 and 11 or 12,
I'm taking a paper out of the garbage.
you can give them her YouTube channel, and she does these edits of things. It's pretty cool.
Yes. It's cooler than
Me, I hold up toy walls because I'm an adult.
Yep.
So yeah, make no mistake. Gavin is watching what happened in New Zealand, and he is like vigorously touching himself.
I'm gonna hold this for a minute in front of your face.
Oh, you're right. LACMA's Museum of Art. I said Museum of Modern Art. That would be LACMOMA.
Are you going there?
The LACMOMA.
Are you going up there? You going? There's no people leaving.
So what does it
Nobody
say?
leaving.
Rainy moon, and as you see, those are zeros, not
Yes.
not O's. So rainy moons.
I don't see anybody leaving.
Yeah, maybe I'll bring a
Someone
I'll bring a
came.
Kim Jong-un clock tomorrow.
The person who came is probably scared for their life. Oh, 2 people just came.
We
Okay,
got-
you 2, please leave right now. Oh, someone left. Maybe
We
they-
got an order. She got an order for a Kim Jong-un clock from Houston, Texas.
Say his name. Say their name.
I forgot his name.
How dare you? No, nobody wants to buy Kim Jong-un clocks. This is not good marketing, Dad. You forgot his name. I see people actually coming.
I'll tweet out the link to the Kim Jong-un clock. By the way, it's $30. That includes
Watching
shipping
this
back
stream
to
is a
you.
new addiction for me. It is like watching a NASCAR race, waiting for a crash with Brian and Reagan doing their thing. What happened to Clock Boy? Too funny. Do you FedEx?
Hey, they moved back to Pakistan. Clock
Do you
Boy moved back
FedEx,
to
eggs up to Seattle. Can we put eggs up to Seattle?
you. No, they wouldn't make it.
That's my chair.
I don't trust FedEx.
I have a cooler chair than my dad. I have a red one, but for you it's orange. So, you guys, tomorrow, if you have not put up a free couch up on Twitter, you better do that. Yes, I can be egg girl.
Here's your choices.
Oh.
Your menu for this evening. And your
The
lunch.
menu, per se.
All right. Cool deal. So you'll do an hour and a half
Why, yes.
times 2.
Well,
What is that voice?
hey, and hour number 3, the tale. A lot of people haven't heard this, but the Germans set up an assassination attempt for the first Big Three summit when Stalin, Churchill, and FDR met in Tehran in late 1943. The Germans, 1942, the Germans set about a plot to kill them in the Russian and British embassy or during a meeting. It was called Operation Long Jump. And it was a serious deal.
Ugh, how dare
how much
they
time?
know Nathan SoCal? How dare they?
It's a pre-tape thing that I did
Where can I get a
about Operation Long Jump,
Dad,
which is
where
going to
can you
be.
get a Skunkworks badge?
You can only get it at the Lockheed gift shop because the guy who gave me the tour literally could not give me anything that was in Skunkworks. It couldn't leave, so I had to go and buy the lanyard, which was worth it. It was like $6.99.
You're showing everybody that you're cheap.
Well, it was a value. You can't say no to a $6.99 Skunkworks.
I have a gift shop, but they're like, what goes in never comes out. How can you get a tour at Skunkworks? How do you get a tour at Skunkworks?
Yeah, you got to know somebody, and you got to have a security clearance.
Bye, can't talk soon.
Okay, then you have to be quiet when the mic is on.
I know.
I'm explaining radio. KFI. AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is a Dark Seeker place. Brian Suits in here until 11 o'clock. In hour number 3, I don't know why it hasn't been a movie yet. I don't know why. If you want to help me write the script, give me a call. But there was, in World War II, when the United States entered the war, there were the big three. There was Stalin, Churchill, and FDR. And Hitler immediately saw, and Himmler, the head of the SS, and others said that, gosh, if only these guys got together in one place, we could probably set about a cunning plan. So cunning, in fact, that you know the shtick. Anyway, late November to December 1st, 1943 was the Tehran Conference, where Stalin took a train down to Tehran, Iran. Churchill took a boat and then a train, and FDR flew and then took a train. Flew into Tehran. So the big three were there. They were there, and there was a Nazi assassination plan. The development assassination plant. So anyway, it was called Operation Long Jump, and I will describe it to you in laborious detail in hour 3, but a very real plot that actually ended up with German paratroopers on the ground in Iran to kill FDR, Churchill, and Stalin. It would have been a coup de main. And did it work? I can't do a spoiler alert on this. You all know it failed. But could it have succeeded? Anyway, we'll get to that. Well, in the aftermath of the massacre now, a week and a day ago, in 7 days, New Zealand has moved to ban sales of certain weapons in the wake of deadly attacks on 2 mosques. Now, this still has to be approved by the New Zealand Parliament. The Prime Minister can't just wave a wand and do this, but she is the Prime Minister because her party has a majority. And so it's almost a fait accompli at this point as we continue with the Latin or the French. That this will become law in New Zealand. Here's how this works, because the relevance to us Californians is that we are probably in America closest to what is happening in New Zealand. Now that we have in place a governor who I almost guarantee has pre-written legislation in the wake of a massacre here in the state of California. I would practically bet my left arm, even though I'm left-handed, my right arm has a hobby, that Gavin Newsom and his team, his cronies, his leg humpers, have legislation literally pre-written to call the assembly into emergency session or Sunday session or whatever to ram, because he has a supermajority. I mean, if you don't know this, let me start it with that. In California, there is a Democratic supermajority. They can raise taxes, they can take your guns, whatever they want. If you say, what about the Supreme Court? Okay, well, I'll see you in 2023. But in 2019, with this supermajority, he's effectively a dictator. Second Amendment, Schmecken Amendment. So anyway, here's what happened in New Zealand. The Prime Minister announced that she said, quote, on 15 March, our history changed forever. Now our laws will too. We are announcing action today on behalf of all New Zealanders to strengthen our gun laws and make our country a safer place. This is Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. So listen to this phrase it pays, by the way. People who possess firearms now considered to be unlawful will be allowed to turn them in during an amnesty period as the government works out an official buyback program. So you heard that right. This is not the standard in the United States when in other states, when a magazine capacity law is passed, is that they grandfather in people who already have that stuff. That's how the assault weapon ban worked and all that, because that's why in America we have what are called pre-ban rifles that are still legal to own and transfer. Those are called pre-ban. And then there's post-ban. We grandfather them in. Not California. California, for some reason, does this and doesn't get challenged. If you're a prior owner of 30-round magazines, for instance, you illegally possess them now. They don't let you grandfather them in. And so what New Zealand did was they flat out banned what are called military style semi-automatics, MSSAs, as well as assault rifles, because it was legal to purchase the weapons that the Australian immigrant who became a New Zealander, that he owned. Those were legal to buy. So what New Zealand's doing is not just banning their sale from Thursday on, which is what Nevada would do, but as if Nevada would do that, or Utah, whatever. What they did was you can't buy them from this date forward, and then, oh, by the way, if you own them, if you possess them, you're turning them in. They're doing what Australia did. Now they're couching it, they're wrapping it up with a so-called buyback program, but will it work? And what's the early response? And you know what's going to happen. There's a bunch of early adopting virtue signalers who will turn their weapons in, just like after the Florida, the high school shooting about a year and a half ago, Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. There were people on YouTube, taking a bandsaw to their AR-15s and crap like that. I can no longer, in good conscience, possess this weapon, and I'm going to destroy it. The answer is be my guest. Okay, go ahead, be my guest. But you're calling for legislation to come to my house with a bandsaw? Yeah, I don't think so. And so what Australia did, what Australia did was they did a retroactive ban. If you own them, they're illegal, turn them in. That's what New Zealand did. And yes, there are people in New Zealand who are batting an eye. And there's Americans just salivating over this, and one of them is in the governor's residence in Well, he doesn't actually live there. But one of them is Gavin Newsom. And he's one of these people who's out there saying, if they can do it in 7 days, why can't we do it? And you all know the correct answer, but this is what the left is saying. If they can do it in a week, why can't we? Why does it take decades? It takes several hundred years. You know why? It's a constitutional amendment. We'll get into that right after this. The near impossibility, which is what the framers and the authors of the Constitution intended, that you can't just modify free speech or the Fourth Amendment or who can vote, what genders can vote by what government is in. There's a reason it's hard to change the Constitution, because these are fundamental. And also, this displays a fundamental lack of understanding about the background of the Commonwealth, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the Falklands, and the United States. We'll be back right after this. Dark Seeker replace Brian Suits in here till 11. KFI, AM 640, more stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news. Hey, but I can hear you snotting. So don't do that, because the mic picks it up. Can you guys hear her snot her nose? She's snotting her nose.
That's because I'm sick.
Well, yeah, but I'm sick, but I have a cough button.
Well, I don't have a cough button. Who's on my side? Who's on my side?
He's not happy about the event.
She has chosen not to criticize the government of Israel in any comment that anybody has noticed. The only thing she's noticed for is attacking Americans who support Israel.
His plan, Omar, has been criticized by Republicans and Democrats for comments deemed anti-Semitic. LA County's Metropolitan Transportation free round-trip Dodger Stadium Express bus rides to the ballpark from Union Station in downtown LA to Harvard Gateway Transit Center in Gardena. Dodger Stadium Express service will start Tuesday evening for the Freeway Series exhibition game against the Angels at 7:10 in the evening. Metro officials said the buses are going to start rolling 90 minutes before the game. Fans do have to have tickets to the game in order to ride for free. LSU has advanced to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA men's basketball tournament for the first time in 13 years. That is, LSU is going to take on Michigan State coming up on Thursday. Crash in San Fernando on the 5.
That's going to be on the 5 southbound side at San Fernando Mission Boulevard. It crashes off the right lane, traffic flows back to Roxford Street. In Glendale, on the 2 south at York Boulevard, a car went down the embankment and another car is blocked in the right lane. Traffic can be slowed back to Colorado Boulevard. If you're traveling in the South LA area, the 110 north at the 10, a stall block in the lane. All right,
Solar Max time. My good friends at Solar Max. Solar Max. Very sunny day today. I was putting power back on the grid today. Hey, Brian Suits here for Solar Max. You may have heard that the utility companies hate you and that they recently stopped their solar rebate programs, which is better than burning you to death, I guess. So, anyway, SolarMax Technology has stood up and taken notice and said, no, no, hands up, no. They're so committed to making solar affordable for ye that they're making up for the lost utility savings with their own Solar for All rebate. Through the end of March, SolarMax's Solar for All rebate, combined with the federal tax incentives, gives you one last chance to get historic savings of up to 35%. That could save you an average of up to $7,500 off your solar energy system. SolarMax can make this offer because they're way different than all the others. They're the best because of, well, I'm going to give you actual reasons. Guess what? They're financing in-house. Guess what? The house is a factory. And guess what? The factory makes solar panels. So they make their solar panels in California. They don't go down to Long Beach and open up shipping containers. They make them in Riverside, where there's also the in-house financing. World-class roofers. That means from installation to design, panel assembly, it's all in-house. Californians do it. You get maximum savings. Don't miss your chance to save up to $7,500 on solar. Reserve your rebate now because Solar for All expires at the end of March. So dial pound 250 on your cell phone and say keyword Solar Max, or read up on all this stuff right now. SolarMaxTech.com. Subject to credit approval. CSLB number 97248.
The weather for cloudy lows, 40s and 50s. Tomorrow we get cloudy, partly sunny highs, 60s to lower 70s. And then mostly sunny after the burn off on Monday. Temperature a little bit warmer, 60s to mid 70s. Few more clouds for Tuesday, highs 60s to near 70. And then Tuesday night, 20% chance of showers. Wednesday to Wednesday night, about a 40% chance of rain. We lead local live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Michael Schmidt.
It's a great time to head to Ralph's and save on your essentials at the Buy 5, Save 5 event. Just choose from a few participating items. And when you buy only 5, you'll save $5 instantly at checkout with card.
It's zeros. It's not moons. I thought we explained this. Those are artillery zeros. Rainy moons, but it's M00NS. We're trying for Dave and Buster's Thursday after next. Really? Sorry. She did zeros. Let me look. Let me look.
Maybe I'm just not popular
Rainy
enough.
moons. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Are you sure?
Oh, well then look up 3 a.m. Megan Trainor. Gotcha life. Yeah, that should come up. Gotcha life. Gotcha. Yay, mine's the first one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at her channel and it is.
It comes up if you say 3 a.m. Megan Trainor Gotcha.
But it is Rainy Moons. REINY space
I have 12
M00NS.
subscribers. I am.
But you know what though?
I'm
That's not. You
dominating.
can't get that on a normal keyboard. What keyboard did you use to get
I
the?
use this.
Really? Really?
Um,
That may be. We may have identified a problem that she used a keyboard. You have to have a keyboard that gives you the artillery zeros.
but that's okay. All you need to do is look up 3 a.m. Megan Trainor Gotcha. And then soon I'll come up on people's recommended.
Are you ready to begin a happy, fun job? Go to MikeDiamond.jobs to begin the adventure. MikeDiamond.jobs.
In the air, Jeff Fogg, KFI in the sky. On the ground.
Walk Long Beach Executive Director Steve Gerhardt says there are a few reasons to push for a more restaurants
In your neighborhood.
In West LA,
KFI, an iHeartRadio.
Can you get me the thing that just came off the printer, please? That's why I bring her in. She's my little printer assistant. KFI AM 640 more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits in here until 11 o'clock, and the movie. I don't want to deal in stereotypes, but Engineer Josh, what is the movie that was just out last year about the Mossad grabbing Adolf Eichmann in Argentina and then taking him back to Israel? The guy who was Poe in the new Star Wars is Rafi Eitan, is the leader of the team, but I forgot what it was called. But I can I'll say this. Netflix. I didn't see it in the theaters, and it's pretty good, and it's spiritually accurate, I guess maybe you would say. But anyway, Operation Finale. That's right. The capture of Adolf Eichmann in 1960, and he was brought back to Israel. And he was tried in what the world agreed was a free and fair trial, but he had a bit of an uphill battle with his "I was just following orders" defense. But anyway, he was. We would now say he was rescinded, or what's the word now that we use when we grab people in Italy and then bring him anyway. But Rafi Eitan, the guy that was based on, he died. And I'll read you a little bit about the Operation Finale to get Eichmann. And then, spoiler alert, he was found guilty and they hanged him. So, but I got to say, they had a near endless parade of witnesses. So it was an uphill battle for old Adolf Eichmann. But good movie. You should, I would say, get a bottle of wine and circle up the kids. It's an okay movie for kids. And stream Operation Finale right after Dark Secret Place is done. So anyway, New Zealand does something that has Gavin Newsom just absolutely gushing, and they ban semi-automatic military style, MSSA, military style semi-automatic rifles, as well as so-called assault rifles. And this is in the aftermath of the massacre at the two mosques in Christchurch, and it's a rubber stamp parliament in New Zealand. Now, this is not to say that the next parliament, this prime minister could have a crisis the next day, lose a vote of confidence, her party could get thrown out, and a different party could come in and reverse the thing. That's kind of the problem. And so when you see people bleeding all over MSNBC, well, the New Zealanders did this in a week, and why can't we do this? Well, first of all, a lot of New Zealanders are not going to comply. They're very angry about this because they watched the Australian assault weapon ban, and then they saw that criminals didn't turn any weapons in, and that a lot of Australians didn't respond and didn't turn weapons in. And a lot of New Zealanders said, am I to trust a government that doesn't trust me with guns? And that's the existential question there. And a lot of Australians said, no, we didn't. No, there's two things. The United States is far different than the Commonwealth. We are the product of an armed revolution, okay? And it was fresh on the mind of all the founders and fathers of this country who wrote the Declaration of Independence, and the ones who survived years later framed the Constitution. And the possession by civilians of firearms was universally agreed to be a foundation, a cornerstone of liberty. Okay, not democracy. Don't go damn, but democracy, but liberty. And that means liberty and freedom from tyranny, liberty from oppressive government, because it was individually owned firearms which formed the initial militia. We literally didn't have enough money to outfit a Continental Army. It required civilians showing up with a powder, ball, and musket, and a battle-worthy rifle, which they did, because Americans overwhelmingly owned rifled muskets, and that gave us literally a 100-yard advantage over the British, and individually in fire. It was a technological superiority on the battlefield that we had. And after the revolution, it was universally agreed that the citizens should be armed, because anyone during the Constitutional Convention who suggested that citizens couldn't own firearms would have been run out of town on a rail. And, smart-ass KFI guy, but they meant a militia. Well, no, they meant the citizens are the militia. The implication here, the implied task is that you all are the militia. If a government is oppressive, you're in the militia, unless you're a sheep. And I suggest you unsheep yourself.com. But it was implied that you all would own firearms because you are all the militia. And the militia doesn't necessarily require government to call it up, because as they had just found out, government were the ones rounding up the weapons. The crown were the ones oppressing the colonies. And so there was an armed revolution. We are the child of blood. There was a revolutionary war in this country, in case you fell asleep in history class. There was no such thing in Canada, no such thing in New Zealand, no such thing in Australia. And so they don't have constitutions that were written while the muskets were still warm. They don't have, their constitutions are basically what the crown gave them when they gave them autonomy and independence, but they're not based on a recent memory of a very destructive war. And I think it's lost on a lot of people that what we call the Civil War was really the second Civil War. The American Revolution was as much a civil war within the colonies, the people who were what were called the United Empire Loyalists, who fought for the crown. And when they lost, they went to Canada. And so that was the memory with which the constitutional system established amendments to the Constitution that are difficult to change, nearly impossible. That's what they intended. That's why they put the things that they thought were God-given, freedom of speech and assembly and religion. Congress shall make no law. Okay, that's what the First Amendment starts with. That Congress shall make no law. The Bill of Rights gives you no rights. You don't have those rights. You're born with them. It doesn't give you those. The Bill of Rights doesn't tell you what you can do. It tells government what it can't do. That's the difference between Canada, New Zealand, Australia versus the United States, because it requires 3/4 of the state legislatures and 10 years and the Senate and Congress. It is a heavy lift to change the Constitution for that reason. And yes, they thought individual ownership of firearms was critical. That was confirmed by the Supreme Court in the Heller decision, that the intent of the Second Amendment was individual ownership of firearms. Okay, so there's that. Are mass shootings tragic? Yes, they are. Are firearms homicides on the rise? No, they're not. They're on a 30-year decline. And that's part of the reason they're so shocking, because we don't have them 10 times on Saturdays in Los Angeles like we used to in the 80s and 90s. Okay, firearm homicides are on the decline in America. And when you take just the mass shootings, even Michael Bloomberg will admit this, they're a tiny percentage of firearm homicides. And the only reason they make that blip is because they're spectacular and horrible and tragic and generally done by people targeting areas that they know will not have armed opposition, or as we say, gun-free zones. So that's an aspect we should talk about as well, but we won't. So anyway, yeah, and all over the place. We're immersed in the coverage, and I am glad that this new trend of not saying the name of the killer, not showing his picture. I like that. I mean, it took them years to figure that out, that these guys wanted immortality and you're giving it to them. But look, what New Zealand underwent was a tragedy. They reacted in a way that right now they all feel like was justified. The proof is in the pudding a year from now, because right now there are a lot of New Zealanders saying, I'm not complying. I'm hiding them. I'm going to say I sold it. I'm going to say I lost it, but I'm not turning them in. I'm not turning my firearms in. But like I say, the thing that scares me for us as Californians is that we have a governor who is openly lusting after what New Zealand did, because he thinks that you and your legally owned firearms are the reason for violence in America or in California, when the numbers just frankly don't bear that out. They just don't. So, all right, that's your New Zealand, California update. When we come back. Okay, officially, finally, now, after the fourth weekend in a row, it is the official end of ISIS. So mark the date. The Syrian Defense Forces are the ones who are calling the ball. They're calling the time of death on this one. So I'll tell you about the 23rd of March 2019, VI Day. That and more coming up. Dark Secret Place, Brian sits in here until 11, KFI AM 640. More stimulating talk. Michael Chapin with the news.
Two big traffic pileups in the several motorists, at least 4 people are reported in critical condition, apparently a child among them. Several air ambulances were called to the scene after a crash in the area around Gorman today.
So get your 80% lowers.
In the southbound side of the 5.
for those of you who don't know it, you can still go to a gun show in Southern California and you can buy a kit to make a Glock lower. You can buy a polymer blank, but now you have to report it. But you could buy a polymer blank and you could put in a trigger group and rails, and you could drop any Glock upper and barrel onto it, and you had an unregistered, legally owned, unregistered handgun, unregistered with the ATF. Okay, that's the thing about the 80% lowers for AR-15s, is that the ATF, if you made an 80% block of aluminum into a AR-15 lower receiver, the ATF didn't care. If it was 81% complete, then they wanted a serial number on it. But they determined that 80% was, that block of aluminum looks just like an AR-15 at first, but then you see the takedown pins and the trigger pins are gone. Takes 15 minutes in a robo CNC machine. Takes maybe an hour and a half for you with the drill press. And those are still available. You can buy them out of California at any gun show. You can buy 80% lower, come back to California, complete it. And then, of course, if you register it, you're complying with the law. If you don't register it, you're not. But how are they going to know you have it? But if you don't know this, you can buy an AR-15 upper, a completed upper, barrel, bolt carrier, everything in the mail from outside of California. That's not a gun. The ATF says that the upper of an AR-15 is not a gun. It's got the barrel, the bolt, and all that. It's not a gun. So since it's a non-gun, you can go to a gun show in California and you can buy an upper. Or you can go to Model 1 Sales or Brownells and you can buy, or never mind that, you can go to Shield Group AMT. And you can buy an upper, and they will mail it back to California, and it's legal. And then you pin it on, and Bob's your uncle. Which, in my case, Bob is literally her uncle. Or Robert's your mother's brother. But what New Zealand did is tyrannical. I mean, that's the only word for it. There's a lot of New Zealanders who are saying that. But what New Zealand did was tyrannical. And pay attention. How often do they expect 50 people killed? I mean, mass shootings are a complete outlier. So now they're taking everybody's right to a semi-automatic firearm away because they're basically saying, we don't trust you New Zealanders. So, okay, this one guy who came from Australia, he did this. We now don't trust any of you. So now you can't have AR-15s.
Does this Noxitral really work, or is it just another scam product? I can tell you, there's nothing better.
Yeah, it's unconstitutional. You can't wave a wand. There's no executive order where you can do that. I mean, it would. I get it. Obama lived and died with executive orders, and Trump, is overturning all of his and the whole thing. But there really is no scenario where Kamala Harris becomes president and issues an executive order for the immediate turn-in of firearms. there would be an injunction from the Supreme Court before the sun came out. And that's another thing that. How much time? That's another thing that the authors of the Constitution thought of. That we have a president, not a dictator.
For your $69 drain cleaning special, dial pound 250 and say rescue. Pound 250 and say rescue. Or go
Michael tried to steal his scoops and salsa and started following them in real life. Toaster set by Factory Direct, the jewelry exchange manufacturer.
Dad, look at the hair on this.
Cool.
I know that you actually did that.
The jewelry exchange has thousands of GIA diamonds at the guaranteed lowest price. You won't find the largest selection or lower price on GIA diamonds anywhere. Certified 1 carat, just $17.90, 2 carat down $58.90, and thousands of designer mounted starting at $199 set one. 3 carat, $39.90.
I have a bumper going out to my friends in South Africa, watching in South Africa. The lads. Yeah, a Springfield M1 or even a bolt action Ruger Scout. I mean, I got to say, I love a semi-automatic 300 Blackout AR-15, but I'll take an M1A. Absolutely.
We can help. Go to iHeartWorks.com. That's iHeartWorks.com.
24-hour news, more stimulating talk. Now, just a voice command away. Just ask Alexa to play KFI.
Getting KFI station from iHeartRadio.
KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Seeker Place Brian Suits with sources all around the world, and this bumper, Swingin' Safari by Bert Kempfert. Going out to certain friends in South Africa listening in Cape Town. So thank you, lads. Anyway, that's for you. That's the only South African music I know, by the way. Except for that stuff that Paul Simon ripped off. But anyway, that's 1962. Well, ISIS is dead. Everyone agrees. What's the opening line of A Christmas Carol? Marley was dead. On that, we can agree. This time, ISIS is dead. On that, we can agree. Dead being defined as no longer controls terrain. And at its high water mark, January of 2015, 3 years ago, at its high water mark, it had a huge swath of central Syria and then going into northern Iraq, threatening Baghdad at one point as the Iraqi army set world records for sprinting backwards. And then someone somewhere told them to halt, and the enemy's that way, and the whole thing. And that was the high tide of ISIS. ISIS enjoyed that high tide for several years, leading to scenes like this. This is from Al Jazeera. Samir recalls a gruesome shock of seeing his friend's headless corpse strung up above Raqqa's main square. It's this memory from a hot summer day in 2015 that defines his time living under ISIL's rule in Syria. Samir says no one was allowed to touch it nor bring it down for a proper burial. He says of the body of his friend, an English literature graduate in his mid-20s, who was killed for so-called activism. I can't describe what I saw simply because there are no words to describe it. Of course, we all grew used to that and almost, you could say, numbed to the executions of Western journalists in orange jumpsuits and the whole thing. The American commander of Operation Inherent Resolve, which is the combined NATO and specifically American mission to lead the Syrian Defense Forces to recruit, train, equip, and lead and advise the SDF in their fight against ISIS. And this was based on a promise that we made. How did we get a proxy army to fight these guys? Well, what we told them was, our enemy right now is not Assad. What you want out of this is independence from Assad. And all we can tell you is the path to that is through ISIS. When you're standing on ISIS corpse, you're going to have a much better position talking to Assad. And that, by the way, kicked off today because the Kurds, not stupid. Anyway, General Joseph L. Votel, commander of U.S. Central Command, released the following statement earlier this morning, quote, U.S. Central Command congratulates the Syrian Democratic Forces for leading the final battle in eliminating the so-called caliphate. The meticulous approach to the campaign was a multi-year effort conducted in a complex environment led by our Iraqi and Syrian partners and supported by the U.S.-led multinational combined joint task force Operation Inherent Resolve. We and our coalition partners salute the heroic sacrifices of the men and women who fought together against Daesh, and we mourn the losses of the innocent civilians caught in the midst of their reign of terror. While our collective efforts liberated more than 7 million civilians from Daesh's brutality, we recognize the fight is not over. We remain committed to continuing our efforts to pursue and destroy remnants of Daesh, which are attempting to live on as an insurgency. We will continue our collective fight to bring about the enduring defeat of ISIS, close quote. And part of what you're going to see, I tweeted out some pictures from someone I follow and who follows me, who's there on the ground. And they're horrific pictures from Baghouz, the Syrian city at the very border of Iraq and Syria, there on the Euphrates. And the end of this was ugly. It was really, really ugly because the final fighters, the dead enders, as Donald Bush's SecDef. Oh, I know him. Anyway, as he would say, they had their families with them, and rather than being magnanimous, merciful, or humane, and allowing their own wives and children to leave, they chose to stay and keep their families with them. And to be fair, a lot of the wives didn't want to leave. They wanted to die with their husbands, and they sacrificed their own children to the cause, just like the Maliks did in San Bernardino. They left their kid with grandma and went and died. I'm surprised they didn't bring their kid with them. These guys decided, and their families decided, we're all going to die together. So they put the Syrian Defense Forces in the absolute SE position. And it was as they got down to literally the final several hundred acres, the ISIS guys were running out with suicide vests. And the SDF guys couldn't do anything about it because they would have had to rain artillery and aerial munitions onto an area known to be populated by women and children. And they put up with this. This is why it's taken 4 weeks. They put up with this for a month as the Daesh were baling wire together car bombs and suicide vests. The SDF guys were absorbing suicide bombers because they were holding off on doing what it would have taken to eliminate this last pocket of ISIS. Well, that ended. They got to a point now that ISIS put them in the worst possible decision-making position you could ever be in your life. They chose the better of two crappy choices, and it was end it now. And so in doing so, a lot of women and children were killed. And I would use the word innocent, except for the fact that they knew what they were doing. They chose to stay. The kids are innocent. The kids had no choice. They were brainwashed. But when you see international press overrunning this zone and taking pictures of unarmed civilians, know this, that they were armed with free will. They were armed with choice, and they chose to ignore it and stay and die in place, and they did. And so physically, the Islamic Caliphate is done. ISIS is over. They now have to figure out how to morph into an insurgency if they care. What we've seen so far is even those guys are dead enders, and the Iraqis are making pretty short work of them as well. All right, we'll be back. Hour number 2. The leader of the team that took Adolf Eichmann in 1960 out of Argentina, he died. His life story, pretty amazing. We'll get to that. And Northrop Grumman and Boeing are at war. The headline, I have to read you the headline. The headline is, Lockheed Martin is waging war on Boeing's F-15 EX. That and more coming up. Hour number 2 of the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits in here until 11. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Yeah, so I'll tweet out the link to the Kim Jong-un clocks, by the way.
4 hours, a toddler had to be airlifted from the scene to a hospital. The child said to be in critical condition. This happened this afternoon in southbound lanes. 15 other people were taken to hospitals. CHP says that there were 2 separate pileups that occurred.
Actually, you know what I'll do is I'll pin the tweet. The closest range to me is a place to shoot in Francisquito Canyon above Santa Clarita. But I have a 25-meter range where I live. That's part of the reason I live as far as away as I do. Yeah. So I have a 25-meter range. And I have 1-inch cast iron cutouts. Reactive targets. So I shoot 300 blackout subsonic through a AAC upper, and it's pretty quiet. And I shoot 5.56 subsonic. My neighbor is a competitive, single action 6-shooter dude.
water, but there are some disadvantaged communities in California that do not,
Hmm.
and that problem needs to be solved. But the problem can be solved without a water tax.
A competing proposal would pay for the water cleanup using money from the state's budget surplus.
All right, I pinned the link to the Kim Jong-un clock. My daughter makes, I watched a bit of Gonzaga, and I watched some Michigan. But I was taking my brother who's a gigantic stoner, taking him to the Reagan Library. My brother's been doing wake and bake since he was, I think, about 14. He was kicked out of the Marine Corps for pissing hot. And to me, that would be sort of a wake-up call. But no, my brother's been smoking weed since he was 14. So he is mentally impaired. He is a complete dumbass. Totally true.
I'm in a farm out right now. Were you talking about Rumsfeld?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the name. I can't believe I can't remember that
Yeah,
name.
it's pretty big one.
Desert Marksman. I'll have to look into it. There is a pheasant and quail hunting ranch up the road. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to run down, old sayings, but yeah, you got to practice. And there's a saying, my friend Tom Bigley, the former Delta Force guy who I have on the show every once in a while, the 9mm, the Hornady red tip, very severe angle on it. Hornady red tip, it will load every time and it can stop. It can stop shit. Hornady red tip. There's a couple different, like 108 grain and things like that. But Tom Bigley, former Delta Force guy, always says, amateurs practice until they get it right. Pros practice until they can't get it wrong. So that's the reason a Delta guy, with blindfolded in a dark room and all that, can do 100 combat reloads in a row without fucking it up. And he also is the one who taught me that when you're practicing reloads, there's nothing wrong with stripping the upper off of a 1911 or a Glock and just dropping and inserting magazines like that. Just sitting there doing that. You don't need to practice dropping the slide. If you want to do a combat reload, do the combat reload, and just get that down. And if you want to add, after 1,000 times of doing that, if you want to put the slide back on and do combat reloads and combine it with dropping the slide, then do that. But you should practice just hitting the slide. Do not put your hand on it. You should be able to just hit it. So anyway. All right. I'll talk about that. And I do think that they assisted his campaign.
And then clouds on Tuesday, chance of rain kicking in Tuesday night. Right now it's 58 degrees in Brea, 57 in Lake Forest, 58 in Marina Del Rey, and 58 in Burbank. Wheeling Local, live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom by Michael Schmidt.
Secret place. Radioactivity is coming from Brian Suits on KFI.
I would bomb the
By the way, you can super fan it, and it'll push your question up to the top. And yes, I will answer.
Dark Secret Place with Brian Suits on KFI.
KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place, hour number 2. Brian Suits in here until 11. Hour number 3, November 1943, the first meeting of the Big Three, FDR, Stalin, and Churchill in Tehran, Iran. And yes, Operation Long Jump was in effect. The Germans did have a assassination plan, and they carried it out. It failed. I'm not spoiling anything there, but the saga up to that is pretty amazing. And I know all the details. So if you want to make a movie, you have to call me. But a true story, Operation Long Jump, Langspringer. Well, the Mueller report, it's written, and the Attorney General, Bob Barr, says that a redacted version will be released. And you're seeing the chattering classes dissect the crap out of it. Does it mean that there are damning allegations? Where are the indictments? And all that. And others are saying, well, Trump is at Mar-a-Lago meeting with his legal team and the whole thing. And I have disliked the choice of campaign manager when it was Paul Manafort, because he's a confirmed dirtbag, and he was recommended to Trump. Trump didn't know him, but Trump chose him as a campaign manager. Whereas the slimmest of surface scratching would have revealed Manafort to be a dirtbag of the highest water, and a associate of the pro-Putin faction in Ukraine. It was just a bad choice. And I don't know why the American media didn't know it. I don't know why the American media didn't dig into who the guy was and what the association was. But then again, in the summer of 1915, so let me tell you about the Battle of the Somme. By Kelly, those were men. Now, in the summer of 2015, you heard me on this show, and you can go back in the archives and you can find it. And this is well before Trump's nomination. It was a year before Trump's nomination. It was when people were still saying this is not a serious candidacy and all that. In the summer of 2015, before he even declared his candidacy, you heard me telling you, WikiLeaks is a Russian front. WikiLeaks is a GRU operation. WikiLeaks is a pure disinformation op. And the best piece of evidence there is that they have yet to release one bit of inside information leaked about Putin's corruption and the grabs that have made him a 100 billionaire by some estimates, etc. And that's not a QED. That's not and so therefore there you go. That is not what that is. There's ample evidence pointing to that. And that's WikiLeaks. And then the close comfort that Roger Stone had, and the phone call status he had, the backline phone call status that he had with Trump was discomforting, because Roger Stone is a whore. He will work for anybody for a check, and so he does. And did he talk to WikiLeaks? Well, I think we know that now. Did he not know that WikiLeaks was a Russian front organization? Maybe he didn't. Maybe he did not. And when you're running for president, I get it. If someone calls and says, I've got dit on Hillary Clinton and it's going to drop. It's going to drop in 2016. I guess you just see victory in your eyes. You don't see what you don't know. And if you don't know that WikiLeaks is a Russian front, then you don't know that. And so I've been saying this from the beginning, and it scared the hell out of me. And then, if you don't know this, Julian Assange has a personal vendetta against Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton, when Secretary of State, once openly discussed droning him, killing him by drone, by Hellfire missile. And she was like, well, can we do that or not? Because WikiLeaks was an enemy of the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton. And so Assange has a personal axe to grind, and then so do the Russians. The Russians had a vested interest in preventing Hillary Clinton from being president of the United States because, and a lot of people don't know this either, but when she was Secretary of State, she sent American State Department officials to Russia to assist the opposition in branding, marketing, sloganing, registering, and campaigning in general. They sent teams of these bright-eyed little University of Virginia idealists with the State Department, the same ones that effed up Iraq for the army. They sent them to Russia to help defeat Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin looked at that and said, wait, I'm trying to actually hold an election, which he really wasn't. But he took that as a personal attack on him, that the United States of America was taking a side in a Russian election. Keep in mind, if RT or Sputnik had officials running around America, working openly for Trump or for Beto or Kamala or whatever, we would be going bananas. But we did it to Putin, and so they were. And I don't think for a second that the Russians were enamored or had any love for Trump. He was the guy most likely to defeat Hillary Clinton. That's who he was to them. It also happens to be a simple fact, and you can check it out, that Trump has been doing business with known Russian mobsters for decades. Trump hasn't had a loan from an American bank since 2000 because he's a bad bet. And he has had loans from Deutsche Bank and others who have direct ties to the Kremlin. So I didn't like any of it, okay? And having a presidential candidate with those kind of ties to Russia is a national security issue. Okay, well, the Mueller probe is done. And maybe the Mueller investigation says there's no ties. Now, Trump is calling it collusion, which is not accurate because he is right about that. There's no crime against collusion. If a Russian citizen lands in America and sits down with Trump and says, I would start chanting lock her up, that's not illegal. It's not. Now, if the guy left a $1 check or a $10,000 check for the campaign and you cash it, that's illegal. But so we don't know what the Mueller investigation says. It might exonerate Trump. We don't know. But that meeting with the Russian lawyers who were talking about Russian orphans and all that, there was so much bad judgment on Trump's part. Not only having the meetings, but having them in Trump Tower. And like I say, for me, it started with hiring Paul Manafort. That was it didn't. It started before that. But hiring Paul Manafort as a campaign manager, not some underling, a manager, a guy who was so in bed with Moscow and that's not why he's going to jail, by the way, not at all. But he ran all the Putin candidates in Ukraine. He ran their campaigns and he took his marching orders from Moscow. Then you hire that guy as your campaign manager here in the United States. The guy had an apartment in Trump Tower. It was just really unseemly. Do I believe in the Steele dossier and the P tape and all that? I don't know. But I do know is that if you own the Miss Universe contest and you stay in the swankiest hotel in Moscow, you're on camera. And if you don't know that, you're really stupid and naive. And if you were in 2014, whatever, if you're in the most expensive suite in all of Moscow, whatever you do, it's on tape, it's on HD video. The Russian Federal Security Service, the FSB, they have it. You don't stay there. If you're the Emir of Kuwait, if you're the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and you don't stay in your embassy and you stay in the hotel, you're on camera. So there's that. So is it a national security issue? If it was true, yes, of course it would be. Is it true? We don't know because of the Mueller probe. So I've never liked the comfort that he has with Moscow before he was president. I sure don't like the meetings without other Americans, meetings using only a Russian translator. I don't like the comfort that Trump has shown toward Putin. And I don't like what's happened to the Republican Party, who have had a collective lobotomy where they can no longer point to Putin and say, he's a bad guy. He's not just a strong, effective leader. He's a bad guy. Kim Jong-un is a bad guy. Xi Jinping in China is a bad guy. He's a bad guy. Assad's a bad guy. Erdogan is a bad guy. And telling him that you admire the strength of their leadership and all that doesn't help. That doesn't advance what we as a people hold as valuable, and that is individual liberty and rights more than the state. And I wore the uniform during the cold effing war. And I am still the guy who is the one saying they may have changed the acronym and they may have repainted the barbed wire, but Russia is Russia and Russians are going to Russia. And you're seeing that with Putin. And for people, what I love seeing are Democrats who spent the 80s and 90s telling me that I was paranoid, now coming around and understanding that guys like Putin are the predictable outcome of the old Soviet Union, and that we should be more wary than ever, not friendly to these guys. So anyway, none of us know yet because the Mueller report isn't out, and Mueller is really good at not telegraphing his punches. I got to say, either there's no punches or he's phenomenal at not telegraphing them. Back right after this, it is the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits more on the death of ISIS and the war. Lockheed Martin versus Boeing. That and more coming up. KFI M640, more stimulating talk. Michael Chapin with the news. There's your Solar Max. You know who thought there was WMD in Iraq? Saddam. Hey, I have to do a live thing here to beat people. You know, it's never had a mid-air stall. Solar panels, especially the one from SolarMax. Brian Suits here for SolarMax. You may have heard that the utility companies recently stopped their solar rebate programs. However, SolarMax technology is so committed to making solar affordable for everyone, they're making up for the lost utility savings with their own Solar for All rebate. Through the end of March, SolarMax's Solar for All rebate, combined with federal tax incentives, gives ye one last chance to get historic savings up to 35%. This is on the whole system. That means you could save an average of $7,500 off of your solar energy system. It means you own it sooner. SolarMax can make this offer because they're the only solar company doing their own financing in-house. And it's a huge house because it's actually a factory where they make the actual solar panels and stuff. They do everything from world-class roofers, installation, design, panel assembly right there in Riverside by Americans, not Americans. Americans go down to Long Beach and they open up shipping containers from China. Americans make solar panels in Riverside. You get maximum savings like I did with my SolarMax system. Don't miss your chance to save up to $7,500 on solar. Reserve your rebate now because Solar for All expires at the end of March. So dial pound 250 on your cell phone now and say keyword SolarMax. Better yet, at your own time, at your leisure, go to solarmaxtech.com and check out everything I just said. It's all there on the website. Subject to credit approval, CSLB number 972048.
KFI actually has some pretty okay cereal. They have Raisin Bran and they
What's
also have Cheerios. Are you ending it? They actually have pretty good Wi-Fi too.
Yeah, don't use wolf ammo. Who here? Who has good Wi-Fi?
Someone said that they need better Wi-Fi.
Yeah, has this been buffering or has it been skipping? Anything? How's the broadcast? And this is you're reading this correctly, right? Or is it backwards?
Is it backwards?
Yes,
Okay,
it's backwards?
It says correct.
Not backwards, okay.
Okay. But,
Your coyote update, Lucille, the coyote border collie, is easily, she's the most possessive territorial dog we've ever had. She thinks she's in charge of the other dogs. She's the smartest dog we've ever had. We've had some really smart dogs. We have had some brilliant dogs, but this dog, she's super snuggly at night. When she calms down, she is just a total snuggle bear of a dog. But man, she is a very, very possessive dog. Our oldest dog, our old mommy dog, Bella, does not have a mean bone in her body. And this dog, Lucille, has just decided to dominate her. And she's attacked her a couple times, and she gets the muzzle. So I put a muzzle on her. I even let her outside with a muzzle. So what do you think? Is she a keeper?
Yeah. Someone asked me to. Yeah, I am eating honey. I have a pocket full of it. They have honey over there. Someone asked me to sing Baby Shark, so I'm gonna do that.
Baby.
Oh wait, I need to get into my full form.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm not Gary Hoffman. I'm not gonna sing the Baby Shark song.
Baby Shark.
Shark do 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 do. Baby Shark do 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 do. Baby Shark. No. Don't mess with me.
Baby Shark.
Because we gotta go back in the internet.
I'm 9, but mentally I am 3.
60 seconds or less.
It's not true. She's 9, but mentally she's 14. She skipped 4th
I'm
goddamn
upset.
grade. Not just 4th grade. She skipped 4th goddamn grade. Baby Shark do 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 do. Baby Shark. Such a stupid song.
It's supposed to be a nursery rhyme.
No.
Well, it's like a little kid's song. I thought I was 11, yeah.
I'm not making fun of you.
Thank you.
You know I'm not.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you're wrong. I'm making fun of you. No.
How's the 3-footed pooch?
Oh, Wyatt is doing great. He finally has a playmate. That's it. The best thing is that he's a young guy and he finally has a playmate. And I mean, that is all they do is wrestle. Lucille, I think just over a year.
The shelter said she's 3, but I don't believe that.
I did a live show at Dave & Buster's called How to Hide Your Guns from Gavin Newsom. And it might be time for that again. How much time? Okay, sit down. Please.
If the robots take over, at least you'll know how to get more stimulating talk. Just ask Google Home to play KFI.
All right. On iHeartRadio.
KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits in here until 11 o'clock. Next hour, the very real assassination plot that was put in place by the Nazis to kill FDR, Stalin, and Churchill at the first Big Three summit in Tehran, 1943. Would be an amazing movie if only people could contact me and I could tell them the story. So more on the physical fall of the ISIS caliphate now that the SDF has officially announced that today. They literally raised their flag on the only building standing in the tiny piece of territory that ISIS held there at the very end. And a spokesman for the SDF announced the group's defeat in Baghouz, yet the fall of Baghouz will likely not mark the end of ISIL as a force in the region. So they'll be chasing them down as insurgents and the whole thing. Another SDF spokesman, the leader, the commanding general of the SDF, said that this marks the transition of the entire conflict in Syria, and he urges the Assad government to begin the reconciliation and peace talks by first recognizing what are now basically autonomous regions, the east of Syria, that the Syrian Defense Forces possess, and with American and NATO help, American and NATO aircraft. And this will go down. It should go down as a superbly crafted fight against an asymmetric enemy, an enemy who could, if they wanted, they could be conventional. They took tanks. They took tanks from the Iraqis. They took M1 tanks from the Iraqis. They taught themselves how to drive them. They taught themselves gunnery. They found gunnery manuals online because they're online. And they made themselves an army. And now they're going to try to make themselves an insurgency. But the SDF and most in Syria are saying they're no longer a territory holding entity. They're now just a bunch of clowns running around trying to be relevant, and every once in a while hitting and running. So from the Euphrates east, the SDF are in charge, and that means us, by the way. Now Trump said he wanted to get out of Syria. This is the money. This is the part here that General Votel has explained to Trump. Now, the reason that these guys fought for us, and the opportunity that we have in the future in following that Northern Alliance 2001 model, now the Syrian Defense Forces 2019 model, that we'll screw ourselves out of that if we throw these guys under the bus. What they said today to Assad was, we want to live in peace. And many of the SDF guys are willing to live in a Syria with limited autonomy, where they're still part of Assad's government in Damascus, as long as there's no repercussions, revenge, none of that. And they're basically saying to Assad, look, we have the eastern third of the country. In fact, the majority of the oil fields. And we want Syria to go back to the way it was, but we want to be autonomous now. We want the freedom that we felt initially in the Arab Spring when we rose up against you until ISIS came along. And so let's start talking that way. And so it's a crucial moment that we're in, that Putin can tell Assad, stick to your guns. The Americans don't have the stomach for it. They're going to leave. Let them do it. And then you can roll over those guys. And if that happened, that would be a disaster in American foreign policy. It would be maybe not a big ping here in the United States, but it would be akin to abandoning South Vietnam. So anyway, we'll be back right after this. Rafi Eitan, the brains and the team leader behind the Adolf Eichmann kidnapping in 1959. Right after this on the Dark Secret Play. He's dead today, by the way. And so his life, an extraordinary life. When we come back, KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news. Yeah, so I'll go till 10. I'll do this. Yeah, I thought I'd be out of here, but I didn't get that. Well, I'm sorry. I want to honor an Israeli hero. I never fingered you for an anti-Semite. But hey, don't hit the chair or anything when I'm on the air. I mean, it was making noise. I'm cutting somebody off from honey. Goat isn't bad. Goats as an animal are annoying and they're horrible, but their meat, they are made of a delicious meat. You know, if you're a fan of lamb, guess what? It tastes like goat. At the market in Santa Clarita that used to be a Bristol Farms, that like super high end, we're like Whole Foods, but we curate the groceries. It's now a Armenian, Middle Eastern and Asian market. It's great, and they have in their butcher section they have a tub of lamb tongues. So there's beef tongue over there, there's sheep tongue, but then there's a tub of lamb tongues, and they're tiny. Nate is correct. My friend Baghdad Dave that I talk to every once in a while, when his daughter turned 12, he took her to Montana for a redneck bar mitzvah, for the redneck bat mitzvah. She took a yearling bison when she turned 12, and they literally was walking out to like 100 meters. And she spent the morning zeroing a rifle, and then they brought the yearling out and she whacked it. And then they render it for you. They keep like 100 pounds of the meat. They give you 800 pounds of meat, 100 pound of bones. The bones were phenomenal. My dogs went crazy over the bones. And then he got the buffalo skin as a rug about a month later. And it was, I got to say, I'll find the name of the ranch. I can't text him because I'm using the phone, but I believe he did it for about $1,000. You know, not including driving to Montana and bringing it back and all that, but the actual get on the ground, get to the ranch, whack the bison. He did that for $1,000. Do you want to whack a bison for your 12th birthday?
Why not 11th?
Or 11th. You know what we're doing for her 10th birthday is next month. We're going to Tehachapi, and she's going to do a glider ride. So it looks scary, but you know, the pilot sits in the back and the passenger sits in front. And so she's going to do a glider ride.
SoCal weather from KFI, cloudy lows, 40s and 50s, with your clearing by the afternoon tomorrow. Partly sunny highs, 60s to lower 70s. Mostly sunny up in the off on Monday. Highs a little warmer, 60s to mid 70s. And a couple more clouds on Tuesday. Highs 60 to 70 degrees. Showers and Wednesday. We lead local live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Michael Shapiro.
My computer's down, right? If anything, that's the problem with it. And elk is that there's very little fat. You know, they're so lean.
Liquidation machine?
Everyone used flippant terms for dirty work.
To make us seem like animals.
We're all animals. Ours just have bigger teeth than others.
Welcome to Argentina.
We have our guy, Adolf Eichmann.
Yeah, Operation Finale. This guy here, Rafi Eitan. Here, let me do this. Yeah, if you see the movie Operation Finale, he's the guy that Poe from Star Wars plays. There's you can get ostrich burgers in Tehachapi. Wait, how much time? Can you get? Yeah. Yeah. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits here. And the Dark Secret Place officially endorses the movie Operation Finale. If you saw it in the theaters last year, you're in rare company. But I did stream it, and it is good. It's a bit, there's points where it's overwrought, but it's Hollywood, you know, and it's a phenomenal story. It's a very dramatic story, and it's one of those stories that actually in 1960, the plan to kidnap Adolf Eichmann took a long time and training, and it wasn't some weekend jaunt or whatever. But it's a very good movie. You should see it. It's not perfect, but there you go. Adolf Eichmann was the notorious architect of the final solution. You know, the German extermination of Jews was happening in small groups in Western Russia. The Einsatzgruppen were traveling around, literally going from town to town, killing Jews. And Germans, being German, saw the inherent inefficiency in this. So they had a goal, they had an end state, they had cargo, they had numbers. And one of the things that you note if you study the Holocaust was that the Germans early on dehumanized the cargo. And they called it cargo, and they called it production, they called it moving, trains and the whole thing. And it was Eichmann who set about the streamlining of the process, from driving around in trucks with the muffler rerouted into the rear, where people would suffer CO2 poisoning. That could take hours. It could take hours and hours and hours, and it wasn't efficient. And what became obviously efficient, and you'll forgive me this, but this is putting yourself in the mind of the Nazis and being a German and being told, make something more efficient than it is. Then that's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. It's just in them. The Germans do this. And what they effectively did was, rather than sending the killers out to where all the Jews were, and with all due respect to FedEx on this, the Germans said, no. Bring them here. Bring them to central killing places. And that's what Eichmann did. And he was a cold, brilliant bastard. And the irony was, some of his favorite professors in college and personal friends were Jews. And he talked about it all the time. But when he was given this mission of, hey, right now we're doing this. We're taking machine guns out to the woods, and it's taking days, and it's not perfect. And he said, how can we make this perfect? They had a conference with German industry, the German Interior Department, and they came away with a plan. And it was, let's stop going to where the Jews are. Let's bring them here. Let's bring them to these killing centers. We'll call them concentration camps. He got away scot-free. He got to Argentina. And one of the great injustices in the world was not just that Hitler didn't hang by a rope, and Himmler swallowed a suicide pill, and Goering, an American officer, helped Goering commit suicide, and that those guys didn't swing at the end of ropes, but that Eichmann got away, and he went to Argentina with his family, and he led a good life under a false name. Well, the Israeli Mossad found him, and the man who was given the task of leading the team to get to Argentina and kidnap him, Rafi Eitan, died today at the age of 92. A great Israeli and a great fighter for justice. Here's a little bit of the trailer from Operation Finale.
Welcome to Argentina. We have our guy, Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the final solution. We should be putting him down like a mad dog. I would happily put a bullet in between his eyes, but that's not what we're doing here. This is strictly catch and extract. Eichmann will stand trial here in Israel. My job was simple. Save the country I love from being destroyed. Is your job any different? There is a problem with the flight. This is a country full of ex-Nazis.
So it is really good. I shouldn't oversell it, but it's the actual mechanics and the reconstruction of the house that Eichmann lived in and the capture and all that, because he was living life as a car assembly line worker. I mean, you'd never know that you were on an assembly line next to Adolf Eichmann. And so what the Israelis did, and you heard a little bit there in the debate, is that there were people like Rafi Eitan, who was a secret agent. He was a Mossad guy. And he was saying, look, I want to do it quick and cheap. I don't get it. Why don't we just go to Argentina and whack him? Just kill him. F this guy. And the Israeli government said, that's not Israel in 1960, because that would be almost validating what he did. We need to be better than him, and we need to make this point to the rest of the world. And so that's why it became such a dangerous mission. It would have been easy to send an assassin to go kill the guy, like Golda Meir did after the 72 Winter Olympics. Just go out and kill these a-holes. Go send this message to the terrorists. It was a way different approach than the Israelis had when they wanted justice with Eichmann. And so they said, no, he's got to come back to Israel. He's got to be alive. He has to be lucid, rational, and he has to be defending himself, which Eichmann did. He was found guilty, and he was finally hung, like Hitler and Himmler and the rest of them should have been. But the mission was led by Rafi Eitan, and he had many adventures, many of which we'll never know. But it was 11 May 1960 that his team captured Adolf Eichmann near his home on Garibaldi Street in San Fernando, Buenos Aires, an industrial community. The agents had been there since April. They observed his routine for many days. They noted that he arrived home from work by bus about the same time every evening. They planned to seize him when he was walking beside an open field from the bus stop to his house. The plan was to have a disabled car and a guy working on the car. Anyway, they grabbed him. They debriefed him in a house for several days. And then the deception was they came into Argentina as an El Al commercial aircraft crew, pilots and stewardesses. And the trick was explaining one extra guy on the way out. And so they drugged Eichmann, and they told the Argentinian authorities that he was just hooched up. As a friend here, and all that. And that's how they got him on the plane. And they sedated him, they woke him up, and he knew by that point that he was going to Israel. He knew what was up. But a really good movie. And the movie also depicts something that the scale of which is not quite understood, I think, in the United States. And that is 15 years after World War II, there were people living in Argentina openly as unremittent Nazis. They were hanging up Nazi flags. Their kids, their blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids were mincing about, knowing full well who their dads were, and they were associating and they were advising political parties. And the whole thing, the Argentinians, all you World War II heads, Focke-Wulf, the German fighter factory and company, who made the Focke-Wulf 190 and all that. Their chief designer, Kurt Tank, who designed some of the deadliest fighters of World War II. Not exactly a war crime, but he was a full-on Nazi. I mean, that's how he got some of the contracts. Because he could throw better parties for the Interior Ministry and the War Ministry than Messerschmitt could. And Messerschmitt could throw some awesome parties. But Kurt Tank took his design for a Focke-Wulf jet at the end of World War II. He took it to Argentina. And they made it in Argentina. He was Argentina, a third world country with an indigenously designed jet fighter in the 50s. Well, it's because Kurt Tank fled Germany in fear that he would be a war criminal, went to Argentina, lived wide open, and associated with former Nazis and all that. Anyway, so the movie's Operation Finale, but anyway, I'm bearing the lead. The point is that a great secret agent, Rafi Eitan, dead in Israel today at the age of 92, and see his adventures in Operation Finale. Back right after this, it is the Dark Secret Place. It is Lockheed versus Boeing in the War of the Fighters. Why are they both getting contracts? The truth, a rare bit of truth spoken by the Pentagon. We'll be come back right after this. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news. Is that a warthog?
I was keeping that in the whole time.
Oh, thank you. What? There's tissue. See that tissue? You just blow your nose.
Okay.
You'll get, hey everyone, if Reagan blows her nose, will you subscribe to her YouTube channel?
Well, I'm not doing that because that's going to become a meme of me blowing my nose.
No, it won't.
Because you can rewatch these. So I'm not... I'm being superstitious.
You can do it off camera.
Yeah, but they'll still hear
Freedom.
the audio.
Eat some freedom. So this will be on my YouTube set tomorrow.
That was a screenshot, boys.
What? Oh.
Duck.
So you're not. So this is going to be part of my. Actually, I'll make it look to scale. No, it doesn't work, does it? No. The TA 183. After At the end of the war, the highest altitude fighter the Germans had was the TA-152. It was a Focke-Wulf 190 with a super lengthened wingspan. The TA-152, and TA stood for Tonk, for Kurt Tonk. His last name was Tank, and he designed the TA-183. And if you have the game IL-2 Stormovik, if you have the expansion, the 1946 expansion, you can fly the TA-183. And by the way, it looks remarkably like a MiG-15. Isn't that amazing? The TA-183 had a high tail, single engine, but the TA-183 looked amazingly like the MiG-15. And then he took that design to Argentina, and he built the first indigenous jet. I'm just a wellspring of info, aren't I?
Does anybody know of any good gotcha editing things to edit screenshots together? I'm trying to look for a good one.
You mean editing software?
Yeah, to make videos because I'm looking for some good ones. I got Filmora. It's okay, but it has a screenshot where it moves, and then also KineMaster does it, and there's no way to say transitions none. So I'm downloading something called Viva Video, and I don't know if it'll work.
Well, we've had a lot of people on, so good for you guys.
Yeah. Good for you guys for being smart. I like how it says number 8 top grossing. It looks like grossing. So people who don't know how to read it say that.
That's still on hold. The Turks have bought. They paid for 10 aircraft, but they have on order about 130. So we are not going to allow them to integrate F-35s into the Russian S-400s that they're buying.
Checking your rate takes 60 seconds or less, and you can cancel your current policy anytime. Don't wait for that disaster to strike. Switch today and save. Go to myhippo.com.
How much time do we have? KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. If you've never heard that song, it's because it's the official Boeing 737 MAX song from 2016, the MAX 8. I don't know, it stalls minutes after it starts. I don't know what the deal is. So, hey, who didn't see that coming? Thank you, good night, I'll be here all week. Well, the Pentagon has admitted, if you don't know this, the Secretary of Defense is a former top-ranking official at Boeing. So there's that. But the decision to buy new Boeing F-15s reflects the Pentagon's desire to keep 2 American companies making fighter jets into the next decade, and not the acting defense secretary's ties to the company. A senior defense official said yesterday, the 2020 budget request contains $1.1 billion to buy. That's what it is for 8 F-15X jets. The F-15X is theoretically the final and ultimate expression of American technology shoved into the circa 1976 F-15. No inherent stealth capabilities, but possibly active transmitting stealth capabilities. But it stems from a project that the Saudis ordered, where the Saudis, not prepared to go into stealth technology, just said, can you sex up our F-15s into a, let's call it a generation 4.5 fighter. So the F-15SA for Saudi Arabia was invented. You can see them flying out of Palmdale all the time. They're F-15s with red wings, and they are Prince MBS's F-15s. Well, the aircraft, American pilots, private test pilots for Boeing, former Air Force guys said, hey, this is a amazingly capable F-15. We have, of course, the F-15Es, the Strike Eagles, and they're terrific planes, but they're coming up on 20 years old. And the Saudis replaced everything, all the avionics, and they came up with a pretty capable plane. So then the idea was floated out there. Well, do we absolutely positively have to only buy stealth fighters? So anyway, $1.1 billion to buy the 8 F-15X jets. And they're just flat out admitting, quote, one of the considerations was the diversity of the industrial base. If we look at something as important as the tactical aircraft industrial base, and we look forward into the 6th generation fighter, production and competition and that kind of stuff, gaining diversity in that industrial base is going to be critical, close quote. In other words, they are admitting that the planes will see action somewhere. We're currently at war in 7 different countries. So the F-15X or F-15EX will see war somewhere. But they're admitting that if Boeing, who is going to be competing for the 6th generation stealth fighter, somewhere between right now and then is going to be a problem. And ask people in Long Beach, all of you who spent a career at McDonnell Douglas making C-17s, if America needed a next generation tactical transport aircraft, what would we do? Because you guys moved on. You're Uber drivers, or you're installing SolarMax panels because it's a great choice. That's what you're doing, because we don't have a next generation tactical air transport. And the last C-17s are being made in Long Beach, I think, right now. And what are you going to do? Get a job at the B-21 plant in Palmdale at Air Force Plant 42? So what the Pentagon is saying, effectively, is we can't let this national skill atrophy. That's literally what they're saying. There was a time, you go back to the 1950s, to the so-called Century series fighters from F-100 to F-107, F-106. And you had Convair, Ryan, North American, Lockheed, Martin. Not Lockheed Martin, you had Lockheed, and then you had Martin, and you had Douglas, you had Grumman. There used to be several companies that specifically made naval fighters. You had Vought, you had Douglas, you had Grumman, and they did carrier planes, and they greenlit everything. The Pentagon would greenlight bad ideas. What do you call it? The Cutlass. What does it do? It's a fighter. It's horribly underpowered. Who cares? It looks awesome. We'll take 1,000. That's how the 50s worked. That train ran out a long time ago, and that's why you have Lockheed Martin. That's how some of those companies just went belly up. And so this is what Boeing is saying. And again, this is why it looks fishy that the SecDef is a former Boeing guy, and he just threw Boeing's, and remember, Boeing is McDonnell Douglas. When we're talking about the F-15, Boeing bought McDonnell Douglas. They merged with McDonnell Douglas. So that is a skill they've had in St. Louis, for decades. And without orders to keep the fighter line working, then it's Lockheed Martin. They're it. They're the only show in town. For fighters, the F-35. And we stopped making the F-22. Why? I don't know, but we did. So what we got is what we got. And the F-35 is just starting its production line. Bombers, What about Boeing? Boeing didn't win the B-21 contract. Northrop Grumman did again. So the B-2 is going to change its appearance a little bit and become the B-21. So this is, as the Pentagon says, this is America protecting its industrial base. The U.S. military is officially fighting wars in 7 countries, according to the White House's latest war report, known formally as the Report on the Legal and Policy Frameworks Guiding the U.S. Military Force and Related National Security Operations. The unclassified portions flags operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, Libya, and Niger, all under the banner of the same war authority granted the 2002 authorization for use of military force, the AUMF. So in other words, the AUMF from 2002 that authorized American force into Afghanistan and then morphed into the invasion of Iraq, who John Kerry and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden all voted for. That same AUMF is what is being used in the countries that were not involved in 2001 or 2. And that is Syria, Yemen, Somalia, Libya, and Niger. They can also add, by the way, Chad and Burkina Faso, because I do know for a fact that we're operating there in one fashion or another. And that, by the way, that only counts for uniformed American military. Private contractors are very much involved in Chad, Djibouti, Burkina Faso, and Mali. All right, next hour, Operation Long Jump, Operation Longspringer. The German Nazi intelligence and SS intelligence coming together for a rare collaboration in 1943 for a rare opportunity when Stalin, FDR, and Churchill met in Tehran, Iran. For the first of the big 3 meetings, the Nazis said, if they want to meet in the same room, then they deserve to be assassinated. And so they attempted the assassination of the big 3 there in World War II. I'll tell you the story of Operation Long Jump next hour. It is the Dark Secret Place, hour number 3, the deep dive into this mysterious and almost unheard of assassination attempt. Right after this on KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk.
Yeah, sorry about me bumping your chair really hard.
I know.
I didn't try to do it, by the way.
All right, let's police this up. All right, I got to put somebody to bed.
Yeah.
And I have to get my daughter home. See what I did there?
Yeah, it was very, very smart.
Oh, F. All right, everyone, thanks for coming to the broadcast. The Kim Jong-un clocks, which she makes, that's the pinned tweet on Twitter at Dark Secret Place. So the PayPal link to buy the Kim Jong-un clocks that she hand makes is there. All right,
I don't make the clocks, by the way.
Well, it's right. We
I print them.
we put it on the clocks. So good night. We'll see you tomorrow night for Super Hyper Local Sunday night. Oh wait. Oh, I'm